Many years ago, my wife Jamie woke me in a panic. She's kind of shaking me and asking me, "What happened to you? Why are you injured?" And quite frankly, I was a little groggy. I'd only been asleep for a few hours and I kind of came around and I was in a bit of pain. And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "On the back of your neck, right here, there's a mark. It looks like somebody's boot." And she was right. There was a bruise that was forming and you could see the bottom tread of someone's combat boot. I then remembered what happened. A few hours earlier, I was on a nighttime parachute training exercise. There were 120 people who were jumping out of an airplane. In less than 2 minutes, all of us would be in the air in the middle of the night sky. And as I jumped out of the plane and I started to count to 4,000, because they teach you if you don't have your parachute open in 4,000, you need to pull your reserve because you're only 800 feet above the ground. So I came out the door and I went 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, bam, kicked in the back of the head. Another paratrooper had come out the door on the other side of the airplane, and just as fate would have it, we crashed into one another underneath the airplane. And I looked up, and he was tangled into my suspension lines. I could see two parachutes, and I also could see a mess of suspension lines and a person above me. Now, I knew what to do in that moment. I'd been on jump status for a long time. I've been through airborne school. I've been through jump master school. But still, in that moment, I was facing a bit of a crisis. Just like you in your work and in your life sometimes face a crisis. So here's 6 things you can do when you face a crisis. The first thing comes long before that crisis actually happens. It's planning and preparation. It's getting ready for, thinking through contingencies and practicing how you're going to respond. Every time we went on a jump, we always talked about what would happen if we had a high altitude entanglement. The second thing is, when a crisis hits, you need to assess the situation. As soon as I looked up, I was looking for parachutes, looking for the other jumper, trying to figure out the situation, because I knew from my training that if at least one parachute was open, we could safely make it to the ground. And we had at least one. The third thing is you need to surround yourself with some really strong players. I didn't know who I was tangled up with when I was in the air, but I did notice that as I was talking to him and telling him what we needed to do, he was following my instructions. Later on, when we hit the ground, I was able to go over and check on him, and he checked on me and actually knew who he was. He was a good soldier, and I was glad that I had been surrounded by really good soldiers. The fourth thing is you need to monitor performance. Just because I look up for a moment and see where he's at and see 2 parachutes, I then don't just check out. I need to keep my eye on those parachutes, continue to see where he's at, and also look for other jumpers, because we don't need a third jumper joining into the mess we have in the air. The fifth thing is, whenever you're faced with crises as a leader, never forget what you already know. You've learned things, you've experienced things, you've watched other people. Those experiences will help you, and you need to lean into what you know. I had my training that I could fall back on. I didn't need to start creating ways to handle the situation. I just needed to remember what I already knew. And then the last thing is, when you're in crisis and things are kind of confusing and people are looking to you, you need to act decisively. Doesn't mean you have to make an immediate decision, but you need to very quickly take in the information around you, listen to what people have to say, and then be unwavering in making a choice to move forward. So there's six things that you can do to deal with crises. And by the way, we safely made it to the ground. We hit it pretty hard, and I'm not going to tell you it didn't hurt for a while, but we were okay, we recovered, and we jumped again in the future.